Hi, Medical Wildcats. I'm Joseph Guggenheim. I'm a 1972 alum of the medical school. And this month, my topic is Abbott Hall. Abbott Hall was finished in 1940, so it's been in existence for 85 years. But I'm going to concentrate on the 5 years of World War II, when it was not used for medical students, but instead was used for Navy recruits. The picture on the left shows what it looked like then on a snowy day, and it still looks the same in the winter. And you can see the furniture mart in the background. The only thing that has changed is now that it is Lakeshore Place instead of the furniture mart. The picture on the right shows a young Lieutenant John F. Kennedy during his time at Abbott Hall when he lived there. In May, we observe Armed Forces Day on May 17th, and also VE, Victory in Europe Day, on May 8th. Before the United States entered World War II, the Navy noticed they had a shortage of officers. They only had 18,000 officers 9 months before the war started. And most of these were stationed in the Far East, where there was a shortage of Army officers. The goal was to increase the naval officers to 36,000 and expand the naval fleet. There were two military programs run at educational institutions. One of them was the V-12 program, which was on the Evanston campus, along with 130 other colleges and universities. The goal was to produce 200,000 technically trained personnel in fields they thought might be useful in the war: science, foreign languages, agriculture, and psychology. The participants attended lectures and classes at the Evanston campus and received active duty pay and received completion certificates, or if they had enough credits, diplomas. There was a young skinny kid from Wilmette named John Carter, who was who you may know better as Charlton Heston. He received a certificate, but not a diploma. By attending these summer sessions, they graduated in 3 years so they could complete their college degree before the minimum age of 20. The admission required 3 years of high school with good grades. As I said, Abbott Hall construction was completed in 1940. The building was designed by the architect James Gamble Rogers, who also designed the Ward Building, Wiebolt Hall, Thorne Hall, which has since been demolished, and several of the buildings on the Evanston campus, the Gothic buildings, Deering Library, and also Dyke Stadium, which was Ryan Field. The Abbott Hall was considered to be the tallest dormitory in the world at the time. When it opened in 1940, it was immediately taken over by the Navy, not by the professional schools at Northwestern. The first class of 399 midshipmen candidates arrived in August 1940 and occupied 4 floors, which the Navy referred to as decks. Midshipmen school trained candidates from 1940 until 1945, and the school was known as Baby Annapolis. The first classes had no equipment to supplement their classroom teaching. The school trained more than 25,000 midshipmen, which was more than had graduated from the Naval Academy in 100 years. The commanding officer of the program at Abbott Hall was Bayard Wygand. He entered the Naval Academy when he was only 16. He was convinced all the way back to 1935 that the United States would soon go to war with the Japanese. He requested his own ship, but said he would be satisfied to serve wherever he was needed. He had previously been an instructor at Annapolis, the Naval War College, and the NROTC program at Harvard. He was summoned from retirement to organize the Midshipmen's School in Chicago. The other military program that was done at Northwestern was the V7 program. And this was a 4-year curriculum for training midshipmen, but it was compressed in only 3 months. There were 20 courses, which included ordnance, which was weapons, seamanship, damage control, navigation, etc. The courses were taught at Abbott Hall, Tower Hall, the National Guard Armory, and Wiebolt Hall. They're all still in existence except for the National Guard Armory, which was torn down. The graduates of this program were known as the 90-day wonders because 4 years had been condensed into 3 months. The admission requirements required a college degree, 1 course in trigonometry, and 1 additional year in mathematics. Although he was not part of the V7 program, President John F. Kennedy was stationed at Abbott Hall. He was in a separate training program. He had already completed the V7 program. He was in a 2-month program for already commissioned officers. And following his training in Abbott Hall, he went to a PT boat training location in Rhode Island. He was promoted to lieutenant in October 1942. The first Navy class at Abbott Hall entered on August 16, 1940, with 399 men. They graduated 337. On December 12, 1940, the second class began, and it had expanded to 906 men. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, classes overlapped with staggering starts in order to produce more graduating midshipmen. There were 19 Abbott Hall graduates that were killed at Pearl Harbor. By August 1942, the number of candidates at Abbott Hall had expanded to 700, and they had taken over 8 decks. After Abbott Hall had reached its capacity of 700 men, the new classes were housed at Tower Hall, which was an older facility built in 1926. It is still located there. It's at East Pearson Street and Tower Court, presently the site of Loyola University Water Tower campus. And the building still looks like this, except some of the ornamentation on the roof has been removed. By 1941, the program had increased to well over 2,000 men. Tower Hall reached its capacity at 1,368 men in December 1942. But because of the age of the building, it was called gloomy. Let's look at what Abbott Hall life was like at the time. It seemed to be constant marching, morning and night. If you were a draftee, you received your orders in the mail, which said, proceed to Chicago, Illinois, report to Commanding Naval Officer, Reserve Midshipman School at Abbott Hall, Northwestern University. The early classes were drawn from civilian life, and the later classes had often attended a pre-midshipman school. In the picture, you can see some of the draftees registering. After you registered, you were fitted for your blues, your grays, your raincoat, and hat on the 5th deck of the Armory building at 234 East Chicago. The first students had arrived in August 16, 1940, and there was a 13-week curriculum. No matter what the weather, whether it was the winter on the left or the fair weather on the right, it seemed like you were always marching. There was inspection on Abbott Hall sun deck. You can see Navy Pier in the background. If you were assigned to Tower Hall, you marched down East Pearson Street to classes every day. And there was a bridge over Michigan Avenue, so you would not have to stop for the lights. And the classes were held at Abbott Hall, Tower Hall, Wiebolt Hall, and the Armory. You stood at attention at your seat until the leader gave his command, seats. Just when you thought there was no use for your previous course in trigonometry, you were glad you had taken it. And the math at navigation got the best of many men. There was also a course in celestial navigation, which was held at Adler Planetarium. Buses transported you to what is now the museum campus just north of Soldier Field for celestial navigation. You learned firefighting at the Great Lakes Naval Station, but it was considered a lousy way to spend Sunday. You learned about guns. You learned how to fire guns and how to take them apart and put them back together on the USS Wilmette in ordnance class. The USS Wilmette was a converted pleasure steamer, which was nicknamed Willie. But many of the midshipmen had never been on a boat before. But the Navy League of the United States very kindly contributed their boats, as well as the Chicago Yachtsmen, for use in training midshipmen who spent several days on the lake. There was homework, just like in high school and college. You had assignments in all the courses, seamanship, navigation, etc. And college often seemed a breeze compared to this. At first, the study materials were printed out on mimeograph pamphlets. In 1943, a meeting was convened in Washington, D.C. to produce textbooks. and new teaching methods were included, including audiovisual materials. Meals were now chow, and the dining room was the mess. These tin trays did not exactly inspire Emily Post manners. Unlike civilians, you could have all the meat, butter, and milk you wanted, and good conversation improved the meals. The officers' mess at Tower Hall was on the 15th floor, and the midshipmen ate at long tables in a room with murals of Chicago history, as seen on the left. At Abbott, officers ate with the midshipmen at round tables on the 2nd floor in a bright, cheerful place. The instructors liked to eat at Abbott Hall because they considered the food good and the prices decent, and there was always plenty of company. If you had been assigned to Abbott Hall, you were considered lucky because the quarters were new and clean and easy to keep clean. 3 men were assigned to a room. But at Tower Hall, you weren't so lucky. The rooms varied in size and description. Some were regular dormitories and others were just holes in the wall. You had to make your bunk every day with square corners and stow your gear. Every Saturday morning, there was an inspection. Sick call, if you weren't feeling good, was at 7:30 and 17:30 at the armory. If you had anything severe, mumps, measles, or anything serious, you were admitted to one of the hospitals, Passavant, Wesley, or the Great Lakes Naval Hospital. Wesley Memorial Hospital was brand new. It was dedicated in 1941. In the 6-month period from November 1944 until June 1945, there were over 15,000 sick bay visits and 784 hospitalizations. If you were admitted to the hospital, you were visited by the chaplain who had experience in the South Pacific. Garrett Theological Seminary on Sheridan Road in Evanston, in the shadow of the Northwestern buildings, participated in an accelerated program to produce more wartime chaplains. Exercise and physical fitness was part of the program also. You had to be able to swim 50 yards. The men participated in informal games of baseball, volleyball, and touch football, and some of them had been outstanding athletes in college. The supply department leaned heavily on the women accepted for voluntary emergency service, or WAVES. On Saturdays, after inspection, it was time to hit the town, perhaps stroll down Michigan Avenue. Or if you had enough money, you could get permission to dine at the Cape Cod room at the Drake Hotel. More than 2,000 men would parade together in what is now Lakeshore Park across Chicago Avenue from the Ward Building and the Weibull Building. In a few months, all these men would be scattered around the world. And then came final exams. You sweated through this, but when you were finished, you felt that a weight had been lifted off your shoulders. And then came graduation. You marched to the graduation ceremony at Navy Pier in your bright new ensign's uniform. The speaker was Admiral Chester Nimitz, and you were now an ensign, and people had to salute you. You were no longer a midshipman. Northwestern was very active in participation in the war effort, including the faculty. The faculty members staffed military hospitals in greater number than any other medical school, and their hospital in North Africa and Europe was known as Northwestern Hospital. The dental school provided civilian dentists until 1943, and then the naval program took over the dental care. Abbott Hall trained more than 25,000 midshipmen, more than had graduated from the Naval Academy in 100 years. And unfortunately, 274 alumni had died in the war effort by war's end. Plans to close the midshipman school at Abbott Hall were announced on July 30th, 1945, and then it was opened as a dormitory for civilian students on September 1st, 1945. The following day, September 2nd, 1945, Japan signed the surrender documents on board the USS Missouri. This picture on the right was given me by a Northwestern, and it said it was a 1940s picture, but there were no civilian students at Abbott Hall until 1945. but it was an early picture of Abbott Hall. I'd like to congratulate the recent graduates from our medical school and wish you best of luck on the next step in your career. And I look forward to getting together next month virtually when I'll have another presentation on Northwestern in World War II.